Hey guys, welcome to another episode of AJ's Green Thumb. What in the world is AJ doing today? So, like I said, when I introduced my fall garden series, I'm going to be doing a lot of blitz planting. So now's the time where all of those plants that are cluttering up my carport and other areas need to be planted. So that's what we're gonna do today. So I'm gonna turn this camera around and we're gonna walk through this garden, and I'm going to try and select good areas or proper areas to put certain plants. All right, so the first thing I want to plant is my Japanese maple. I can't pronounce the name. It is at the tip of my tongue. But generally, Japanese maples like part shade areas. They like a little sun. They need sun to color up, but they need that relief, that afternoon shade. So, granted, I haven't been back here in a couple of days, and I gotta say, things are looking kind of scary. So, this particular Japanese maple gets 15 to 20 feet tall and wide, so it's gonna need a good amount of space. I'm thinking, let me kind of back up here. So here's the half circle garden. It's not looking too great, is it? It needs water. Here's the front of the half circle garden, and I've got all of this space right here. I'm thinking this magnolia right here, maybe I can put it in front of that. Let's see. In between this Nellie Stevens holly and this magnolia, I got this space right here. I can always limit up. So if I put it here, but see, if I put it here, it's going to be blocked by this. And that kind of defeats the purpose. I don't want to have to come all the way to the back just to see it. You know what I mean? This is where I was at just a second ago. I was in front of that compost bin. Maybe we can put it there. And I even considered putting it over here. Listen, if you're sticking with me 10 minutes in this video, I applaud you, okay? Because at this point, I'm just doing a lot of rambling. All right, so this variegated boxwood desperately needs to be planted. We're gonna plant this boxwood right here. A few peonies are gonna go in. And along the length of this, I mentioned in that video where I had, perforated the bed, I'm going to put a lot of catmint and sedum. Okay, so this is one of the big plants I have to plant. I just picked this up yesterday, actually, from Patuxent Nursery. It is a Thuya Arborvitae. I took the tag off to give to the cashier. Anyhow, that's pretty much what it is. These get relatively tall. Let me show you guys an example. Here's an example right here. I've had that in the ground just a little bit under 2 years. That fence is 6 feet, and that thing is, I want to say, probably 2.5 to 3 feet taller than the fence. So we're talking about probably a 9 foot tall Arborvitae. All right. It might go in the cut flower garden to kind of help with the formal look. Let's bring it back there now. I've also got those other two arbs that I was able to acquire at Lowe's. That's when I did that challenge video with Renee from Renee's Garden. So here is the Japanese maple I was talking about. I'll go ahead and put the name of it up on the screen. So I'm gonna go ahead and take it back right now, along with that arb, to find a placement. So yesterday at Patuxent, I also went ahead and got a few of these Viburnum. This right here is an Eastern Snowball Viburnum. It gets to be 12 feet tall by 12 feet wide. So it gets to be a nice size shrub. It needs early day sun. So we're talking morning sun and that evening break from that harsh sun. So these will gladly go way in the back. Here is that emerald green arborvitae that I got from Lowe's. It's looking very rough, very dry. I'm almost considering not planting it. But we're gonna go ahead and put it in the ground and let it stay over winter. See if it can develop a decent root system. And because just like the arb I just showed you that's out in the landscape, it looked just like this. And you can see it rebounded pretty well. This one right here, I have been watering these guys, just not enough. This one as well. This is the Bound Arborvitae. All right, so let's grab some plants and bring them back. So as I'm walking through this part of the garden, I've got the half circle garden to my right. I've got the pergola and the patio over there. I think this will be a nice setting to have this very large chartreuse colored Japanese maple right here. I think this will be a nice statement piece as you're coming to the back part of the garden. So we'll put the Japanese maple right here. Granted, it's a taller structure and it is pushed to the forefront, but sometimes in design, you need a statement piece, and the statement piece needs to be up front in your face. So that's where we're gonna put it. And like I said, if it decides to have branches that come a little too far out, I'll just prune it back. Hope you guys can see me. So this back area right here, I've got this Nandina. It'll get roughly 12 feet tall at maturity, and I'm sure it'll bump itself out probably 4 feet. So I'll have to keep that back in check. This emerald green arb right here, it'll do the same thing. It'll take up 4 to 5 feet in width and about 10 to 13 feet in height. I don't know if you guys can see this with all the sun, but this is a dragon lady holly. They get to be about 13 to 14 feet tall and about 3 to 4 feet wide. So this right here is the Skybound Arborvitae. It gets 15 to 18 feet tall, very tall, and only 3 to 5 feet wide. So it's relatively narrow in width, but like I said, it'll grow into its neighboring plants. So this Nandina, it will grow into that. And then I also have a holly shrub right here, which we know is going to get about 5 by 5. And lastly, this arb that I picked up at Patuxent yesterday. This will also get about 5 to 6 feet wide and easily 12 feet tall. So like I said, I'll have a full wall of green back here that I'll just have to selectively prune to keep in check. All right, so let's get the shovel, get some compost, put these in the ground, and move on to planting that Japanese maple. All right, guess I'll go ahead and do a little bit of cleaning up, a little bit of housekeeping. For me. The rest of this, once I plant each shrub, I'll put cardboard around the base and mulch it. So first things first, I gotta see if I can even plant anything here, being that we got a huge tree right behind us. So we gotta see if there are any root zone obstructions. Going down so far. That's a good thing. That's a good sign. That's a good sign. That's a very good sign. Oop. What we'll have to do is we'll have to mound this arborvitae up. We'll just have to mound it up. If you dig deep enough, then you get to some roots. So we'll just mound it up, that's fine. And then its root ball, or its roots, will grow around the roots of this tree. So, put some biotone, stinky biotone in here. These roots are pretty good. No need to go crazy and tease them that much. Backfill that hole, and then we'll cover it with compost. So what I've learned with planting, instead of mixing the hole with a whole bunch of amendments, here's when you want to mix your hole with a lot of amendments. If your soil is on the extreme side, if you have infertile soil, then you want to go ahead and mix in a few amendments. But if your soil is relatively fertile and you've got vegetation growing in that area, your soil is good. What you want to do is feed your soil. So what I'm getting at is, after you backfill with the native soil, then you can go ahead and top dress the area with compost. And what will happen is the worms and the microbiological organisms will come up to the compost and they will bring the compost down. Worms and other animals as such. Okay, so we'll just backfill with this native soil. Not wasting a crumb. It looks gruesome, I know. You've got grass, weeds. Consider that nutrients. Okay? Got annual weeds in here, so they'll die back over the winter. Okay, so now that I've backfilled with native soil, okay, And the reason you want to backfill with native soil is because you want the root ball, and essentially you want your plant to get as acclimated quickly as possible to the native soil so that there is less transplant shock. Again, the symbiotic relationship between the roots and the native soil will be activated a lot quicker because the roots are in contact with native soil. So that produces a very amicable relationship between your newly planted plant and the native soil. Okay, get off the soapbox now. All right, but yeah, that's just a tidbit. And you could always feed the plant with some fresh compost dressed on top. All right, that's that. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and plant this Bound Arborvitae. This one gets pretty tall. Things you find in your garden. I'm also watering the surrounding soil of the root ball. That way, once the root ball dries out, it'll still pull water. Well, you know what it is when you're watering a plant, you're thinking most of that water, especially if you're aiming your hose at the root ball, you're thinking that your root ball is absorbing most of that water, but that's not the case. If you have dry soil and you're watering the root ball, which is dry, guess what? The surrounding soil is absorbing all of that water as well. So you have to really, that's when they say water deeply. You have got to water deeply, especially when you have a new plant in the ground. You have to water obsessively for the first 2 to 3 weeks. Let's get this baby wet. It looks really sad. So let's backfill with the native soil. Just gonna absorb all of that water and just put in the hole. And I know you guys are looking at all of these weeds, all of this grass around this root ball. Listen, once I mulch with the cardboard and the hardwood mulch, these weeds don't stand a chance. Just keep that in mind. All right, so now I'm gonna follow up with the compost. So this whole area back here is going to be mulched. It's going to be mulched heavily. This area is going to be a mulched part of this cut flower garden. All right, let's finish watering this in and move on to the other arborvitae. Now this one is going to get watered in so much, it's going to be a little ridiculous. Why? Because the root ball is so dry. So the regimen for nursing these shrubs in their cans, I'd water them deeply, like twice a week. No more. I let them dry out. I don't keep them constantly wet or constantly moist. I let them dry out. Okay. So that's the reason why this one was so dry. The reason you don't want these to get super duper wet and stay moist is because you don't want the root ball to rot. Okay? That's one thing. When you're nursing these plants, you bring them home from the nursery and you don't plant them right away, you want to, you're tempted to keep them moist at all times. Here's the thing, because with me doing that, I lost so many plants. You've got to let the root ball dry out when you're nursing these plants in their cans. You cannot keep them moist or heavily just damp. You can't. It rots out the root ball and it kills the plant. This Dragon Lady Holly right here did very well. It's doing very well. Okay? So I'm not worried about these arbs going in back here. All right. Let's get this out the pot. Finally put it in the ground. It will thank me for it. Yeah. See, this wasn't root bound at all. I might need to stake it a little bit though. Let me get a stake. All right, we found a decent stake. This right here is roughly 6 feet. Boxwood is left to grow at its own devices with ample watering, sufficient watering, it will grow 4 times its size. 4 times its size. All right, let's get some sunlight here, folks. Actually, the sun has already set. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this episode of AJ's Green Thumb. I wanna thank you guys for hanging with me. If you hung with me this far in the video. The last plant that I planted is this variegated boxwood right here. I think it's a good look. I think it's in a good location. It's right at the end of this bed. So it's like an exclamation point. That's the way I look at it. All right, guys, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up right here. Thanks again for hanging with me on this episode of AJ's Green Thumb. See you next one.